Welcome back to another video here on the channel. This time we are talking about focus, flow, attention, and deep work. The ability to focus is getting increasingly more important in our economic environment, and at the same time it's getting increasingly more rare. Let's look at how to improve it and why it is so important. I would put focus in the category of meta skills, skills that are useful in many areas, like reading, being able to operate computers, and so on. I want to start with a personal anecdote here. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science and believe it's one of the least effective time periods that I spent. Because most of the stuff I wasn't really interested in learning, and the rest of the stuff I could easily better teach myself through articles, books, YouTube, and simply tinkering. But I do think that I learned one very important lesson in my university time, and that is to stick with problems longer. Whenever I had a very complex math problem or some algorithm or theoretical computer science problems that I couldn't wrap my head around, it was always only a matter of time and focus until I could. Sometimes it took a few minutes, sometimes hours for days after days, but eventually I did understand what's going on. So what I got out of my degree is a twofold skill. First, I'm not afraid of difficult, complex things, because I know I can understand them if I invest the time. And secondly, focus is the absolute necessity to solve these things, so I learned how to focus more intensely for longer periods of time. Now, let's make sure of one thing: no one can multitask. What you describe as multitasking is switching between tasks, not doing multiple tasks at once. You simply can't focus on two things at once. You can only focus on one thing and have an intuitive process running in the back of your mind, like walking down the street, for example. But what happens when you switch between tasks is you suffer from attention residue.
Who studied an effect called attention residue. This is a crucial effect to understand if you want to understand productivity in the knowledge age. Attention residue is a very simple effect to replicate in the laboratory. Here's how you do it. You take an undergraduate, you sit them down, you give them complicated puzzles to work on, and then you have the researcher come in and tap you on the shoulder and says to the undergrad, "Oh, I'm sorry, we forgot to fill something out on your form. Can you just come over for a second? 2 minutes, just fill out this form, put them back to the hard puzzles they're working on." If you do this in the lab, what you notice is that their performance on those cognitively demanding tasks plummets once they return to the puzzle from that brief interruption. Sophie Leroy calls this attention residue. That shift of context to something else leaves a residue in your brain that remains when you switch back to the primary task. And it can take a long time to clear, 5, 10, 15 minutes for this to clear out. And you can actually just graph their performance over time. They're doing fine, 2-minute distraction, they're down here.
So switching between tasks is extremely inefficient because of the attention residue. Do one thing, then do the next thing, but never do two at the same time. It's not a secret that our attention spans are going downhill. This has two reasons. First, more distraction through push notifications on our phone, people expecting instant replies, and open office workspaces. And second, just as importantly, overstimulation. Our brain craves distraction, or more precisely, new bits of information. This is known as the novelty bias. Every new bit of information creates a dopamine hit in your brain, which is a stimulating chemical. Having access to a smartphone essentially terminates our relationship with boredom. You can always mindlessly scroll down your Twitter or Instagram feed, or have a YouTube video running in the background for endless stimulation. You can break this by doing the following.
So a key foundation to succeeding with deep work is to break this Pavlovian connection. And the best way to do it is just to experience on a regular basis, not all the time, but on a regular basis, boredom where you just remain bored. Your brain then breaks that connection, it rewrites the script, and it says, okay, sometimes when I'm bored I get stimuli, sometimes when I'm bored I don't get stimuli. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. That's a much healthier relationship to have with your brain, and it means it'll be much more comfortable when it comes time to concentrate intensely on something. Because it says, yeah, it's just one of those circumstances where I don't get stimuli. That's okay, I'm used to it.
This is what I mean when I say that the ability to focus is getting increasingly more rare. Now, why is it so important? First reason, and this goes back to the Extremistan world we discussed in the Black Swan video, in a digital world the reward for creating something really useful is basically limitless. If you create something mediocre, however, you are in trouble. Second reason, a global economy that now gets increasingly more remote means you are getting more and more competition. Third reason, you can not expect that what you learn today is still relevant in 20 years. The information age means lifelong learning. You will have to adjust and learn new skills more than once in your life. And the fourth reason, knowledge workers are getting more and more important as tasks that don't need creative ideas are getting more and more automated. So what you should be doing to learn new skills and level up your execution, just getting things done, is learning how to focus, learning how to do deep work. Professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate. My favorite example for deep work is Bill Gates. He created the basic software that laid the foundation for Microsoft in only 8 weeks. But there are also many other characters that profited from deep work, for example J.K. Rowling or Carl Jung. Now, why does deep work work? Deep work creates myelin, which makes focused tasks more effortlessly over time through faster firing neurons.
To understand what happens during deep practice, we need to learn about myelin. Every human movement, thought, or feeling is a precisely timed electric signal traveling through a specific chain of neurons in the brain. Cells called astrocytes sense the nerve firing, which stimulates another cell called oligodendrocyte to wrap myelin around the fiber. The more the nerve fires, the more myelin wraps around it and the faster the signals travel, increasing velocities up to 100 times over fibers that are not myelinated.
This understanding is important because it provides a neurological foundation for why deliberate practice works. By focusing intensely on a specific skill, you're forcing the specific relevant circuit to fire again and again in isolation. This repetitive use of a specific circuit triggers cells called oligodendrocytes to begin wrapping layers of myelin around the neurons in the circuits, effectively cementing the skill. The reason, therefore, why it's important to focus intensely on the task at hand while avoiding distraction is because this is the only way to isolate the relevant neural circuit enough to trigger useful myelination. Daniel Coyle even went so far to propose the equation myelin equals skill. Skill is a cellular insulation that wraps neural circuits and that grows in response to certain signals. When being distracted, you simply fire too many circuits at once to really improve. Now this is like a very theoretical way to look at things, so how can you actually implement it into your life? Here are a few tips to improve focus. Turn off all notifications on your phone. This sounds hard, but it's actually quite easy. I've been doing this for 3 years or so. I only get notified for calls, which can be emergencies. Everything else doesn't show up until I open the app. No WhatsApp, no Slack, no mail. I decide when these things deserve my focus, and my phone is not allowed to decide that. Apps like Freedom that block access to social media pages or anything that might distract you online. I don't use these, but I know many have implemented apps like this one successfully. In the end, it all boils down to living a less stimulating life and minimizing distractions when you want to get things done. Block time to work on the most important thing every day. Could be in the morning or evening or whatever works for you. 1-hour sessions are great. If you're more advanced, you can go with 90 minutes. If an hour feels impossible, start with 30 minutes. If your total of these sessions is 4 hours per day, you will outperform your former self by a landslide. The goal is to turn deep work into a habit. To stay motivated in an unstimulating deep work session, you can aim for the flow state described by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. What you do should be at best intrinsically rewarding, should have clear goals so you can track progress and feedback, and most importantly is neither too hard nor too easy. On another note, focus is not the one-fits-all solution. Not focusing on things but simply letting your mind wander is the most important thing to come up with new ideas, as I explained in my video on learning techniques. So think of it this way. Have an open or even scattered mind to find opportunities and use your curiosity to find interesting things and explore ideas. Then use focus and deep work to get to the core of these things. Get the most out of the opportunity, solve the problems that pop up when learning, and turn ideas into reality. One is exploration, the other is execution. Get good at both and success is pretty much guaranteed. That's it for this video. As always, I hope that you learned something and that you now think about how to incorporate deep work or at least concentrated study sessions into your daily life, whether that's getting something done at work or just learning a new skill. If you're interested in more in-depth content, I would advise you to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I see you next time.